Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Inside 60 Days, an after-show panel that goes behind the scenes of the A&E TV show set in the Clark County Jail. That show, called 60 Days In, follows 7 people from across the country who volunteer to stay undercover as inmates in the jail for 2 months. In last night's episode, the 5th episode, viewers watched as close calls nearly jeopardized the entire undercover program. In between crises, other inmates struggled when dynamics shifted, leaving some behind while others flourished. To talk about the latest episode, I'm joined by Clark County Community Corrections Executive Director Danielle Grisette. Thank you for joining us, and Major Sam Beard, Clark County Jail Commander. My name is Elizabeth DePompe, and I'm the Public Safety Reporter for the News and Tribune. Danielle, since you are new to the panel, if you could first start by telling us what Community Corrections does and what kind of work you do.
Community Corrections offers work release, home detention, and day reporting, and basically we're an alternative to incarceration. So the people that we are supervising are there in lieu of sitting in the county jail or being at the Department of Corrections. Some of the offenders are pretrial, some of the offenders are sentenced, so basically they're serving their sentence. While they're on Community Corrections, they're required to obtain employment, pay their restitution, pay their child support, and any other obligations like court obligations. They're also required to attend treatment. So if they have a substance abuse issue, they have to attend substance abuse treatment. But this is a privilege to be on home in detention or work release or day reporting. So if they're not successful with our program, they'll go back to the county jail and possibly go back to the Department of Corrections.
One thing I've never been clear on, the people who are in the work release program, where are they housed? Where are they staying?
They're above, it's the 3rd floor in the county jail.
Okay.
And that's where the whole Community Corrections is located. And that's where people come in for home detention and see their case manager.
Okay.
And one of the big things with Community Corrections is setting out case plans for the offenders. And basically a case plan is a map for them to succeed. So it tells them, a lot of people think, I need to go get a job. Well, when these guys get out of the Department of Corrections or they get out of the jail, they don't have an ID. Well, you can't just go to the license branch and get an ID. You have to get your birth certificate first. Well, first you have to mail something off to get your birth certificate. Then you have to get your Social Security card. Mm-hmm. Then you can take those documents and go get an ID. So it's easy to say, go out there and get a job. Well, when you don't have an ID, no one's going to employ you. Right. And a lot of them don't know the process. You have to get online and print stuff out. Some of these people have never used a computer. So we basically help them get started, get employment, and then it's up to them to be successful from them. We set out the map and they have to follow it.
Major Beard, can you talk a little bit about how the jail and maybe your staff works with Community Corrections and why that's an important part of the program?
It's a very important part of the program because a lot of people, back when I was young in corrections, working in the prison system, somebody get released from prison with $75 in a bus ticket. I always thought that's a setup. You imagine them taking you don't have anybody or anywhere to go. You did 10 years in a prison, you don't know and getting $75 in a bus ticket. I'm pretty high on Community Corrections because there's a need for that. There's a need for a component. Like I said in the first show, we got the front end locked down. We lock people up at a high rate and we incarcerate them at a high rate. What we don't do is work on the back of it. Danielle, since she's took over Community Corrections, she's working on the back end of it, and she's doing an excellent job.
And Danielle, I understand that you were a corrections officer at one point.
Yeah, and it's been about 10 years since I worked.
How long were you an officer?
About a year. I worked as a corrections officer and I worked as a classifications officer. And one of the things he pointed out is, working on the back end is we're supervising, I think, 165 offenders right now. If those offenders were not with us, they would be down in the county jail possibly, in an already overcrowded county jail. Also, and you'll be able to elaborate on this a little bit more, but with Community Corrections, they're responsible for their own medical. So if somebody has medical issues, they go to the hospital, they use their own insurance through their employer, or they use Medicaid or whatever it is. Where if they're in the county jail, if they have a heart attack, that's on the county's dime. That's on the taxpayers. Any medical need that they have is provided for by the county jail through the taxpayer money.
Yes.
And so what are your thoughts on the show so far?
I think it's it's actually a little bit more tame than I thought it would be, especially since they kind of know that they're being filmed. I thought they'd be acting out quite a bit more, but it's a pretty accurate look at here's the male section, here's the female section. And with females, I don't know if you've all touched on this, but they create pseudo families. Whereas males, they do everything through aggression. They do everything through intimidation, where females, they create a pseudo-family, and I think it's Boston is the main female in there. She's like the mom. You know, she's always playing with people's hair, and then they're always taking care of her, and she's the one in charge. She's the mom of the pod. And what the other character's done is come in and disrupt that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a family, and they're bonded.
Let's talk a little bit about Tammy, because the thing that jumped out most to me was how when she first was in, she seemed to be adapting really well. She was demanding respect, and those tables really turned on her last night, where she was openly disrespected as she's, you know, standing there collecting trash. It was quite a change. Major Beard, how do you think Tammy can come back from that? How does she handle it?
I don't know if she can come back from it. What Tammy did, she went in, if you seen at the first part when she's being booked in, she got a little mouthy with the sergeant being booked in. She was trying to go forth as a lady that's not going to take no stuff. She didn't bond with any of the ladies. She finally got to Barbara because Barbara was sitting by herself. And Barbara is a meek person. And when trouble come, Tammy thought she'd go to Barbara, hey, you got my back. And Barbara distanced herself. How you come back from that is you just try to get back, not in favor, but you try to get back in that, like Danielle said, a family type atmosphere. You try to fit in.
And I think laying low, one of the things that Barbara did differently than Tammy is, you know, Tammy's a very aggressive person, just in her stature. And so she gives off that intimidation that, you know, I'm not going to put up with anything. Which I think in the beginning when they took her shoes, she did have to show that, you know, I'm not going to let you take advantage of me. But she didn't have to go beyond that. She could have sat back, did her time, which is what Barbara's kind of doing. She's created her own little family or her own protectors. So people are less likely to mess with her because she does have a group of friends, so to speak.
Let me go to a viewer question comment from Twitter. How can Tammy, who has been around criminals for 20 years, she's a veteran police officer, have no understanding of them? She should be able to fit right in. Do you think that's necessarily true?
No. Tammy's a police officer. Police officers in this community, they'll spend 45 minutes with somebody arrestee. And when they come in the jail, they're ours for until their case is done. Tammy never lived in that atmosphere. She really didn't have a clue what a jail dynamic was like. Yeah. You know, she locks people up and takes them to a detention facility.
And she even says as much that when she confronts Boston, she realizes, well, if I was an officer, I would just put her in cuffs and, you know, be done with it. But she had to back off because she didn't have those same tools. Talking about Tammy, but also Jeff, they both seem to have these pasts that come back to haunt them in the pod. So Jeff has been bullied in the past when he was a kid. Tammy grew up in and out of foster care homes and felt abandoned at times. How do you see inmates being emotionally affected by the world of the jail?
First and foremost, Jeff, let me tell you something. Wolves can sense fear. Jeff goes in there, they can sense he's scared. They start taking his commissary, he starts giving away stuff, he sells his lower bunk. Really, Jeff was in trouble from when he walked up there with them patent leather shoes. Mm-hmm. You know, so how does it affect people, you ask?
Yeah, because everyone comes in with a story and with history.
Right. Since after we did this 60 days in, we got a brochure we give to people that are getting out. You know, people can have trouble sleeping, they can go through depression, they can become suicidal, they can become drug dependents. Going in jail is an emotional thing. You're going into a world that we can't replicate in society.
I think it's not a far-fetched idea to think that everyone who leaves jail, especially the first-time offenders, leaves with some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder. Because you got to think of your most stressful life event. That's what's going on for the people there. And for the participants, it's a little bit different because they know that they're going to get out. They know that there's an end date. However, they're still facing that type of stress. And you have people that I would say 85% of the offenders that are in there have a substance abuse issue. So they're being incarcerated, and most of them that use substances are doing it to self-medicate. They have some kind of trauma in their life, whether they were molested, physically abused, neglected, and they're trying to use the medication, or drugs or heroin or whatever to self-medicate for all those emotions. When they're being placed in jail, they don't have that crutch. They don't have that anymore. Plus, they're going through the stress of living within there with all the people that are aggressive towards them. So I think it's a very stressful thing. Now, you also have your, normal convicts that come in and out of the jail. It's like home. Hey, there's my cousin, there's my uncle. What they had on commissary. They're used to it.
A perfect example of that last night was Roby. Roby's at home.
Right. Well, I want to stay on Jeff for a minute, because he thought he was getting the hang of things, and then he saw that he wasn't, and one of the ways was that he was blocked from using the bathrooms or the showers. We had a couple of viewer questions from Twitter. One was, why would you force people to walk through others' bunks in order to get to the bathrooms? The other was, how do you control the day room bathroom? So Major Beard, explain what was happening, why he didn't have easy access to a bathroom.
Well, as you seen last night, we had 3D3 as a day room bathroom. We had people sleeping on bunks. Those bunks were put there to alleviate some of the overcrowding. And there was a lot of dispute by the past administration how many that jail was supposed to hold. I was there for the building of it. It's supposed to hold 446, and that's with the holding cells and everything. Mm-hmm. So when you say it holds 485, and you keep that many people, you got to create bunk areas. Well, guess what? You don't have any restrooms out in the day room, so one of those cells has to be the day room bathroom.
It wasn't designed to hold that many people.
No.
And it was designed to have the 4 bunks, and then
Right.
they have the bathroom. And when I worked there 10 years ago, that's all that you needed.
Right.
And some of the other like pod 2 and pod 1, they have just a general, shower area. But this section wasn't designed to hold that many people. But when you're incarcerating a large population, then you have to put them somewhere.
So is there a designated bathroom for the people who are out in that common space?
And here's, you learn as you go. Here's what we had. We designated the 3 cell for the day room bathroom, okay? That's one of the problems we noticed. We got a list after this was over with, so now we've got them all marked and we got them all vacated. We don't house people in there now, and we got day room bathroom stenciled over the door.
So there aren't even bunks in that.
Well, they're bunks,
but there's not housed.
If we catch somebody in them, then they get written up.
But that way they don't control that area
Right.
either. If they're not bunked there, then the only reason they should be in that section is if they're going to the bathroom, and the guards can kind of keep track of, hey, get out of there unless you're going to the bathroom or using the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You had mentioned before how you see some of the inmates who have been in and out of the jail and who have friends or family, and it's kind of like going home. And we saw Barbara start to get really close to her bunkies, as she calls them. So do you think you can make real friends in jail? And are those good, healthy friendships to hold on to?
Good, healthy friendships? No. But everybody's got emotions. Everybody. When we were filming this stuff, we had a corrections officer that had sex with a female inmate. So we're not, and I tell officers this, and you probably heard this, Danielle, we're not hanging dashboards at the Ford Motor Company. And when you deal with human beings, emotions come into play. And you always go to the people that seem to like you pretty good. But you always got to have eyes in your back of your head when you're developing those friendships in a cell block.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she even apparently opened up about her husband and talked about him.
Right.
Do you think that was smart?
I don't think that was smart for her safety and her family's safety. I think if she was a typical offender, then it wouldn't be a big issue. But, it does put anything that you give them information, whether from an officer, or from an offender, they could use that information. Okay, so you kind of have to keep in mind that these people use information. And there's a story downing a duck that Major Beard has most of his corrections officers. I don't know if you still do it. And it's a story about a person in prison, an offender. They start out with small stuff of asking you for this or asking for that, and then they make it bigger and bigger. But the more information you give or the more little things that you let them do, the more they could take advantage of that and use it against you later. So I think her, getting too close with them, I think that's dangerous. But I think doing the opposite of Tammy, of isolating yourself, is also dangerous. I think you want to be there, but not really be noticed.
Right. I'm curious to know, we try not to ask about Robert every week, but it's hard not to. What do you make of Robert and how he's reacting to segregation?
He's pretty ridiculous, isn't he? He has a different look at segregation than anybody else who goes to segregation. One of his things is he knows he can get out at any point. He can say the code word and he gets out. If it gets to be too much, he gets out. He knows that he has an out date, that he's going to be there 60 days and then he gets out. Everyone else that goes to segregation, even if they get out of segregation, they're still going back into the population. Most of the people in jail, they're waiting on their sentence. They don't know if it's going to be, 6 months or they're going to send to the Department of Corrections and go for 10 years. So that's the advantage that he has, and that's why he could pretend like it's a joke, because it is a joke to him, because it's not his reality, and he understands that. Whereas for most people, it is their reality.
Right. Major Beard, you said one thing that really bothered you last night was seeing Robert in segregation getting commissary. Explain why that bothered
me. No, enragement. Yeah, I was enraged.
Yeah.
That's why I have to watch this show by myself. People in commissary are supposed to get a mat, a blanket, 2 sets of whites, if they got them, white underwear, white shorts, white shirt, and a jumpsuit and a Bible. That's it. We give them indigent packs where they can groom themselves. Soap, toothpaste, toothbrush, comb. Segregation is someplace you don't want to be. As for you, Miss Elizabeth, you wouldn't want to go to jail. No. People in jail don't want to go to you always got to have that, and you got to run it tight.
So what do you think happened? Was he getting special treatment? Was it a mistake?
It was a mistake, and we're going to fix that. It's one thing that stood out to me last night that just can't be. And Robert, I couldn't be in this room with Robert myself, and I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Well, let me to talk about something else that I think you've mentioned before that really bothers you or makes you nervous. Are those top cells in the balcony? And we saw at the very end of this episode a woman fall or jump, and she seems pretty seriously injured. What kind of conversations or what kind of precautions does the jail take? Because that does seem like a safety risk.
And Danielle can tell you this, that's one of my big pet peeves, is keeping people off that top rail. The first murder I seen in prison, small guy went up, grabbed the big guy's ankle. If they're on the top rail, we'll tell them one time to get down. If they're up there again, we write them up for being in an unauthorized area. And I tell them that's for going to and from your cell. That's it. You're not supposed to be congregating up there. I went and visited a jail, I done forgot what county, and they had somebody, there was a congregation, and one guy almost went over the top rail. And I told him that top rail is dangerous territory. It's an equalizer. We've had officers get in fight with inmates up there, and they're leery of that rail.
Is it an option to raise it or put some kind of fencing all the way?
You know what? We ought to have the courage to keep people off the top rail. I mean, if we have to build all this stuff to control people, and everybody's concerned about Pod 3 being open, but there's no place to lock anybody down. But I got officers on 3rd shift, 2nd shift, and 1st shift. When they're up there, inmates are behaving. And on 3rd shift, I got 2 or 3 officers, when they say get in your cell, they get in their cell and don't come out.
I think one of the things that the jail does as a precaution is do mental health evaluations on the offenders as they're coming in too. However, you cannot measure everyone's mental, with that many offenders in there, you cannot keep an eye on them, because I think it was a suicide attempt, isn't it?
Sounds like it.
But they do have mental health evaluations when people first enter jail, and that's usually when they're going to be most suicidal. Granted, you cannot look into the future and see what's going to happen with this person. Did she receive a phone call from a family member? Did she, something happen with her family member that made her suicidal? Or, what conversation she had to push her to this point. and you could put, you know, a fence up. If it wasn't that way, she'd find a way. You know, it's not that it was convenient. If it wasn't that, then she would do something, you know, take her jumpsuit, rip it up, tie it around her neck. If she wanted to commit suicide, she was going to find a way.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Danielle. When we come back January 2nd, 2015, the prior administration, if somebody jumped off the top rail, instead of incurring the medical costs, they got a moral ward. So when we come back, everybody was jumping over the top rail, swallowing stuff. If they said they swallowed a razor blade. So it was for those who qualified, it was a get out of jail free card.
Mm-hmm. So now what happens if somebody does that? They survive. Do they get
some
kind of program? I mean, what?
We get them medical help. They see a psychiatrist, and then they're up on that top rail doing what they're not supposed to do. So segregation.
Right. Well, there's so much more to talk about, but we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you both for being here. And that's it for this episode of Inside 60 Days. For all of our 60 Days in coverage, go to newsandtribune.com/inside 60 days. To ask our panelists your own questions, tweet at News and Tribune using the hashtag Inside 60 Days. And if you have had your own experience in the Clark County Jail, email me at elizabeth.depompe@newsandtribune.com. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Jeffersonville High School and to the students who help us every week. And thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.